It's me again. Hi. Yes, so I did this earlier and I'm stupid. I also forgot to record my audio. So we're going to do it again. And this time, do it right. So, first off, hi. I'm Tim, the storyteller for Seattle at Dawn, which is a Mage the Ascension Chronicle. I also storytell other games and play D&D and Cyberpunk and some of my own custom stuff and all sorts of cool things. But today we are going to be going over my processes for running Mage and other tabletop games, specifically if I'm using digital format like this. Playing around a table is different than playing, in the virtual space. Um, if you are, if you got friends, if you're lucky enough to have people that will hop on a camera or a mic, uh, then you can do a lot of cool things. And one of those is using Discord for video and stuff like this, but also Roll20 or other virtual tabletops like Foundry and to a lesser extent D&D Beyond. Though they're not quite a virtual tabletop; they're just a virtual character sheet and a bunch of stuff. But I digress. So when I do Mage, and because Mage is more of a theater of the mind type of scenario, you're not really using tactical grids or maps. I try to provide visual aids for my players, and that's where Roll20 is really good for the virtual tabletop for maps. It can also be used as a uh, visual guide. And let me show you kind of what I'm talking about here. Um, Video is going to disappear, but you should still hear me. It's going to pop into my scenes in my. Yeah, so here's my normal layout. If you've seen the show, this is kind of the standard layout that we go with. I've got my three main characters there, Charlie, Anea, and Jezebel. And then, of course, we got me. Apparently, today I am a blue Twi'lek. Um, but with this particular layout, we've got the border. I don't like the border. I kind of didn't use the actual um, source materials for, so I've improved upon that. It's a little grainy, and I don't like that. So we switched that up. Also, the player windows, I'm going to be making those not too dissimilar. They're going to be about the same. But I am going to be getting rid of the chat window for Roll20. It's useless. I don't necessarily think the audience needs to see it. My players can see it, and that's good enough. But what I really kind of focus on here is we've got the virtual tabletop. And if I'm focusing on that with my players, say I'm doing a tarot card pool or there's a lot of things going on where they're in multiple um, rooms. Like there's a house that's got 5 rooms, and I've got each of those rooms represented in Roll20. They can move their tokens to whatever room their character is in. Um, so part of the idea going forward is that we're going to make this even more dynamic and even more accessible to the audience. Because right now, the tiny little window, not the best thing. People can't necessarily see a whole lot. Um, I can transition to, say, the Etherean reaches, and players get this kind of idea of like they're in the sky and they've got a crow and they've got this big tower, but the audience can't necessarily see that. The players see it, but I want to make it so that I don't necessarily have even this is a small space, and I want it to be bigger. So how do we do that? What are we going to do to make this better? Well, let me show you. So we're going to bring up Photoshop here. What you see here is the template that I use for the pages in Roll20 for the settings. Currently, it's a smaller resolution in Roll20 than 1080p, and it's kind of got a weird angle, and it's not really great in terms of sizing. It doesn't match the grid. Um, and there's just a lot of little things that I didn't like. But the basics of the show's not changing, so I'm not going to reinvent everything. So this is just kind of basic. It's got a logo, it's got the title, and it's got a settings. This is kind of like where like if you're in the Ethereum reaches, this is would let you know the name of where you're at. So to speak, um, the next thing that I would want to do is I'm going to be leaving this behind, and we're going to go to a more um, aesthetically pleasing. Now, this is what the final result would be for the background of the the game, and actually, it's going to look more akin to this. Um, this is the base of what we're looking at. You got me, storyteller. We're going to have of course, all the information about who I am, what I am, and all that. Same thing with the players. Um, have the player names, player pronouns, character names and pronouns, and also as in the previous version of this, their tradition. This kind of gives each window its own customized look and feel for the player, but still tying it all together as this is mage and magic is described as spheres. So I kind of liked this idea of everybody having a circular window. So we're going to keep that. Um, the purple tapestry, the silk background, the plan is to animate that. And if you're going to be using items in the virtual tabletop, that's where the purple background kind of comes in. Is instead of having, because you can't really animate that in Roll20 as easily, and it would not be as seamless as I would like. If I did have it animated, switching scenes would be a little bit more jarring than I'd like. Um, Having something like this where you can fade into, for example, let me just pull up here we go. We will use the same Ethereum reaches here, but we'll use the new version, and we'll show you how that will look. So now you've got these Ethereum reaches that are in the background. Now we still have all the player windows blocking what the audience sees. And that's okay, because that's not the focus at this point. But when the focus does become something for the screen, we can animate these player windows aside, and now the players can move their tokens around. Um, Say Charlie wants to go to the castle, and Jezzy's wants to hang out here and all that, and say Indea wants to investigate this uh, vortex, this portal here. So they can all do that. We can size the tokens however we need. Again, it's all just part of the visual representation of what the players are trying to perform, what they're trying to do. Um, so we can definitely get a lot more out of this. And as you can see, even though in Roll20 I've got the purple background, I got it chroma keyed here in the OBS, so you can still see that silk tapestry background. Again, when that's animated, I think this will be really, really clever. Or maybe not. Maybe it won't be clever. Maybe it'll be pretty weird. But so here we are. We've got our template, and I want to update some of the older scenes that we have, some of those older pages with the updated model. I can show you. We've got a couple of examples here. So for, let's say, yeah, Ash's Sanctum. So in the past, oh, I don't have it. Let's see. Let's do it this way. I don't know what happened there, but I do have this. Okay. So Ash Ravendor aka Griffin Claw, aka just an awesome mage character, is an Astaru style verbena who does rituals for herself and has her own little altar space in her sanctum. So we kind of created this page to represent that, and I like it. However, what I ended up doing instead is that we made this. Let me pull up the new Ashes Sanctum. So now we've got Ashes Sanctum. I used some AI image generation to kind of get a more um, grandiose altar. This is mage. This is fiction. This is not, we're not trying to recreate the exact Astaru faith. So I added in the single image of the altar that's got kind of got some dark spookiness to it. But then I also took these elements that were from the single image of like the Star of Faith of the different runes, and what I did is I incorporated them to hang from the top of the screen and added in the and just had kind of the elements of that faith surrounding the postcard. So I think that is going to be pretty neat. The other cool thing, of course, is when you're playing mage and there's people rolling dice or whatever, getting rid of that chat window. People necessarily can't see the results, and that's fine. They don't need to see the results, but we're still simulating a tabletop game. So I do have my players roll their dice in the game this way, and so you can still see that in this case, there was one success. Two successes technically because of the offsite 10 that you can't quite see. But again, me as the storyteller, the players can see that, and we can adjust and tell the story as we proceed. But there you go. You've got some dice that pop up, and it's all um, nice and pretty. So, and that can also happen while you're in this mode too, so people can still see the dice. If mage wants to cast a spell, there we are. We got our spells. So just adds a little bit of visual dynamicism to the whole process. So we can fade that out and we can come back in here to Photoshop. And so as you see, I've updated the old image to have the new image. So what do we want? What scene? What setting do we want to update? Um, well, I don't know yet. We're gonna figure that out. I've got a whole bunch of things in here um, that I do want to have added in. As you can see, I do have a lot, and at the top I have everything organized alphabetically for different scenes. So we've got the Ethereal Reaches, and we've got Ash's Sanctum, and then of course we've got things like the Chop Shop and etc. Um, and I've just been going through and updating each one for a new page. And you know what? Let's see. I don't have it. So let me show you. We've got Downtown Edmonds. Downtown Edmonds isn't, a so yeah, if we look at the old tabletop, we've obviously got some weirdness. It's not quite gonna fit, and it is a not a mess. It's not the idea. It's not a mess, but it is definitely definitely not going to work the way it is in here on the new system. So we're going to update our downtown Edmonds setting. So here in Photoshop, we got our template. First thing I do is once I pull up the template and I know where I'm going, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to change the scene name, setting name. So I also have this on a grid. This is 60 by 60, so it fits the tokens. The tokens are all sized to work with the grid 60 by 60. I do know that if I were to move my tokens around, I've got these spaces here. I've got one here, one here, one here, one here. I could put in up to seven player windows in this space, in this L-shaped space here. So I'm going to downsize this downtown Edmonds font just a bit so that it doesn't cut into that player space in the off chance that I happen to have enough players to fill up all that space. I know it doesn't necessarily happen all the time, but it does occasionally happen. So let's go ahead and just take it from 60 to 50. No, that's too little. Let's go 55. Yeah, I like it. 55. So 55 right here looks about right. And then we Control Shift S to save as, and we just name it Downtown Edmonds. There we go. So as you can see, when I made this template, I had a lot of my spacing in mind. Like I said, I worked on the 60 by 60 grid, so I know the spacing of all the new images that I create is based on that spacing. And then I also have my guidelines here. I've got my center line here, center line there, because that's good to know. And then I've got everything kind of gridded out in terms of this is 240 by 240 spaces. So that's the small player window. And of course, I can make it the different player windows bigger. I even have an example of all the player windows at various sizes here. So if I needed to conceptualize a new idea, a new space, I can do that too. Not relevant to this particular task. So let me go through all the different layers one by one here. We've got our background layer, which is that same purple that we use for our background that we're going to chroma key out. And our chroma keying is very tight. It's very specific on this color. Doesn't need to have a lot of spread. It's designed to basically have things float around it. Then this is my stand-in for the silk background. This is very much from the Mage the Ascension books. I was able to grab this from their materials on Storyteller Vault, which gave me a lot more higher fidelity and accurate images. When I make windows and when I make the postcards, they're going to have their own kind of border. And that border I've made a example. So this window example is just a purple square or rectangle. And then I've got these layer styles or effects. I've got these effects that, layer styles. That's what they're called. So I've got these layer styles where it fades from a brighter yellow gold to a darker gold. And then just a drop shadow. And I keep it pretty tight. I don't want a lot of blur or feathering because of the animated image in the background. I want to try to eliminate as much strange artifacting as possible. I don't want to distract from that. And also very much so using the same type of mentality that you would with miniature painting, kind of top-down zenithal lighting. So I made the drop shadow 90 degrees and all the lighting 90 degrees because I want to, in some cases, flip it horizontally. And if you have some images that are, shadowed to the left and shadowed to the right. That could be a little weird and off-putting, especially with like player tokens. I've designed the player tokens to be able to be flipped horizontally as well. So again, also the same idea of the zenithal lighting 90 degrees. So yeah, I've got this here. Um, we've got the Seattle at Dawn logo, which I popped out and put into OBS, so that's going to be always present. This the What we just changed the settings title. That is going to be specific for the setting, so that's something that's going to be in here for each scene. And then, of course, the beautiful badge, the M20 logo. Um, Showed you the various tokens. They're all many different sizes. And then we've got the border. This border is used also in Mage of the Ascension. I went ahead and grabbed it from Storyteller Vault. This is a higher fidelity version than what I had. I was able to stretch it to the dimensions that I needed, made the edits specifically in this region and the lower region. Pardon me. Oh my gosh, sorry. A little under the weather. Managed to get my COVID booster yesterday, so hopefully I'll be better later. So, as you can see, we've got a much better border, and I've got a nice shadow there. The shadow is used to indicate to the players that they're in a play space in Roll20, but it's also used to kind of give some depth between the frame. And you can see I'm kind of using it right now in this video. Kind of probably looks weird. You got window within window, right? And then the final thing that I've got on this is this focus area. This focus area is basically just a shortcut for me to know that if I have player windows that I've recessed to the edges, how far they come out to the edges. And then that also tells me that I've got this big area here, that I can really work with that does not get interrupted by anybody. So this space here is kind of the focal area for the audience and the players in Roll20. So I want to make sure that if I'm trying to convey specific information or I want people to see it, this is the main area. I can still put background items into into these spaces as well, particularly in this space underneath the storyteller window. Um, but it's going to be less important information. It's going to be things that should drift off to the side and not be as well noticed. So it gives me a little bit of leeway there. Um, so that's the breakdown of the template, and from there we are now going to make our downtown Edmonds. I can do a couple different things here. I can use all new, or not new, but I can use the same imagery that I used before and resize it and everything. Or I can, because this is a update, it's not a new setting. I'm not having to make new stuff, and I might go over making new things for this later. But this is more of a general overview. So I'm going to grab the master that I made for that setting. So downtown Edmonds is going to be right here. And so we've got all these. We're going to drop that down to smaller size. Same thing here. This one's a much larger file. I kind of got a little over zealous when making these and used a much higher resolution than I think I necessarily needed. But here's the basics, and it's very similar, obviously. But I want to grab these guys and pull them in. I'm going to try and use some of the same things. I'm going to also bend things to make it a little more organic and less hard edges, at least temporarily. So we are going to take all these layers. We're going to clear their layer styles. So they're just postcards, no big image there. I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to drag all these. Actually, before I do that, I want to know where I'm going. So I want to make sure that they're going to fall in between this Windows example and downtown admins. They're going to fall between those layers. So got those. Grab shift, pull it over here, and you're going to see way too big, right? That's fine. We're going to close the old one, and now we're going to dock this again, and we're going to be right back where we were before, showing off this stuff. I can copy the layer style from the Windows example, and I can paste it. Oh, before I do that, one thing I have been doing moving forward is I'm making sure that all the different scenes that I make for Roll20, all those settings, they will have both the material world version and the spirit world version, because mages can exist and observe both. Exist in and observe both. So I'm going to change all of these layers into smart objects, and that's going to allow for me to do some individual adjustments on each of them without affecting the space around them or their layer styles. So now we want to copy the layer style from Windows example, and we've got to paste it to all of these. So now they all get their borders, but they're still too big. They're not in the right space. So let's get them spaced into the right location. So let's grab the one at the front. And the one at the front is going to be, we're going to scale it down here. Oops. If you scale from the center like that, there we go. We can find the center of the page. And I like that right there. Do the same thing here. We're going to scale it. Scale it in. And as you can see, we've got the focus area where it shines bright. And so we know that that's going to be in that area. I'm going to leave it a little bigger than I probably want, because I will probably do even more resizing. I just want to get all of these sized in a way that I can manage them, that I can deal with all of them. So leave that big for a moment. And go ahead and scale this one down. Center it, so to speak. There we go. Grab number 5. Yeah, I know I didn't name my layers. These are things that I'm doing relatively quickly. I don't feel the need to overly name them. I want to be able to do this relatively quickly. I don't want to be burdened. So Claire's restaurant, there she is. And then the final one, which is I think this guy at the top here. So the ferry. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've got all these various images that may or may not be exactly what we need. But we got a nice dynamic space, and people can see it. And I think now what I want to do is I want to make sure I get the sizing right, and I also want to add a little bit more pizzazz. Right now, they're all kind of these postcards that are coming in at different angles and perspectives, and that works. That's neat. But I want to do more, so we're going to do more. So let's grab this one, Edmonds. Nice little welcome to Edmonds thing. So we're going to do some warping, and we can pull that up, that up. We can really kind of drag this around and up. And you can pull this in, really kind of exaggerate the shape if you like, and kind of gives it that floaty paper feel. And I'm also going to continue with some more extreme perspective. So we're going to kind of push this even further up, like that. Probably going to do something like that as well. And what I find that does is that because I'm doing the zenithal lighting 90%, I can actually kind of cheat and get some more separation, some more shadows from the things that are going horizontal. So I think that's always been fun. Now we don't want to block the downtown Edmonds thing too much. Yeah, so there we go. We got it up front. It's in your face, and that's working out well. So we could probably pull this in. I want this guy to be more, and we can do some cool things here with the warping. So we can kind of bring these pieces in here, but we also can bulge the top here. So now it's got this kind of neat curving from behind sort of thing going here. We can kind of do that. We can even bulge this out a bit. There. We can bring these in. And now it's got this kind of flow going. I like the flow. And we can push the perspective a little bit more. And pull that. Now we're going to go ahead and rotate it a little bit. Just a little. Doesn't need to be a whole lot. It can just kind of come across the edge there like that. Then we can this can go all the way over because I'm not going to have any players over in this space very often. If I do, it's going to be a really weird thing. So now let's grab the ferry. Now the ferry, I kind of don't like it being behind that picture. I want it to be more up front. So I'm going to bring it to the front. I'm going to have it right up here. I'm going to rotate it down a bit. And we're going to give a little bit of warping. This one I don't want too much. Just a little. Just a little bit. And what I'll do is I'll do this idea. We'll do that. Do this. And these guys will be up. Let's be out. push the perspective a little more. Pull that out a bit. Then rotate it a bit like that. I like it. I like it right about there. This space right here is going to be where the storyteller window is, where I'm at. So um, I'm not going to be in the way of anything. So yeah, that looks beautiful. And then this central image, I think, could actually be smaller. It is too big. So let's bring it down. Let's scale it in. Let's take it down here. These postcards don't have to be so overlapping. You can actually have the purple background showing. It's exactly kind of what I want to do there. So the Edmonds fountain right there, central image, and we can. I'm going to do a little bit of warping here. Fold that in a bit. Fold that in a bit. So nothing too extreme. I think in this case, that's probably for the best. Just like there. So it looks like things are kind of more in that space. And now we've got the inside of the restaurant, Claire's. Now, this can probably sit comfortably right about here, but I want to make it smaller. So, there. It's definitely smaller now. And we're going to do a little bit of. Can you see the pattern here? A little bit of my current obsession, right? And they don't have to be a whole lot. In fact, you don't even have to do the whole thing. You could probably just get away with doing something like this, even. Look at that nice little curve there. I'm going to do that down here. There. Now we've got a nice little waviness to it. And we'll go ahead and rotate a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and I think perspective wise, I like that. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and make that that. And then the final one here, we're going to have Claire's restaurant. There. And we can bring in the scale a bit because I want to see more of it. There. Yeah, with the new format, I am scaling things down a lot because of the centralized area. So if I have like the same number of pictures, I definitely need to make a lot of them smaller. But that's okay because that's kind of what we're into. little bit of warping, nothing major there. And I like it. I think that does it. So let's see what the final product's going to look like. So the final product will look something similar to this with me. Hi, here I am. And everything will be hunky dory. Obviously, we'll have the once I get the animated silk set up, that'll be one thing. But for now, this is where it's at. So we're gonna do a couple things here. I earlier on made these all smart objects so that we can add in our spirit effects or spirit world effects. So when I do invert, you see the fairy changes to the reverse colorization. But the spirit world isn't all about like it being exactly opposite. And honestly, I just changed something that was very golden to something very blue, and that the spirit world doesn't necessarily do. Oops, wrong one. So I want to grab hue and saturation, and I'm going to go all the way over to 180, so we get this. I also want to pump up the saturation because in the spirit world things are much more, tangible, but it's also darker, more shadowy, and not as not as bright as what we say. Certain things are, and we're definitely going to be using that to our advantage. So this is kind of the scheme that I'd like for the spirit world, and we're going to now apply that to all of them. I don't know if there is a faster way to do this. I just kind of came across this, but there's no way to really copy the not the layer styles, but the smart filters. Um, I wish there was, but here's the workaround. So I've got this smart object. I'm going to make a copy of it, and it still maintains the smart filters, but I can grab and drag that smart filter onto another smart object, and then I can delete the item that I got it from. And I'm just going to do this all the way down for all the different layers. So copy, move, delete, copy, move, delete, copy, move, delete. And if there's a faster way of doing that and you happen to know it, um, I am not too proud to beg. So yeah, if you can like leave a comment and show me or tell me like, hey, there is a way of copying smart filters. Here's how. I would really like to see that. So now we want to basically save our base version. So I'm going to turn off all the smart filters on each of these layers for now so that we have our material world versions. Just like that. And so now I'm going to save this. And this is saved as our downtown admin's scene. And we are going to turn off the things that we don't want to bring into Roll20. In this case, that means the gold border, the Mage badge logo, the Seattle Dawn title, and the silk background. We want to keep just that shadow border and the purple, and of course the postcards. So now we'll save for the web, which is Control Alt Shift S, and you can save transparencies in here, but in this case we're not making a transparency, so we can save some file size and just save it as setting downtown Edmonds, boom, like that. But we're not done. We do want to um, have our shadow, um, our spirit world. So we turn on all the smart filters, and now we've got this image. And we'll do the same thing, Control S, Shift Save, or S, and we're going to save this as Downtown Edmonds dash Umbra for the Umbra. There we go. Now, since we saved it earlier, we made that base version. We can just hit F12 to revert back to this. And we have created our backdrops for Roll20. So now let me show you how we bring that into Roll20. So here we are. This is the old Edmonds thing. We want to make the new one. So I'm going to go to the page. I'm going to copy the words because why would I ever do anything other than copy if I don't have to? All right, I try to keep this alphabetical, and I'll go back in here. So I got the Chop Shop. Right after the Chop Shop should be Downtown Edmonds. So we are going to hit on the duplicate page. I don't want to keep any of the items on any of the 3 layers that are in Roll20. So we're going to duplicate that. And oddly enough, it put it on the second page, but we're going to move it here. And it's still called the Chop Shop copy, but we are going to change it to Downtown Edmonds. There we are. So here we are, Downtown Edmonds. We got the same purple background. If we wanted to check on the settings, you can see that it's a 1920 by 1080, that we are using 60 pixel squares, that we have the opacity on the grid turned off, but we are still snapping to the grid. That's important if I wanted to have like dynamic images, like I could hold off on some images in the GM layer and reveal them to players later. Knowing the grid and that it snaps to the grid allows me to keep the sizing and everything really, really tight. So here you see we've got a grid going on there, and you can see it's all 60 by 60 edge to edge, and no half anything. But we don't need the grid because we're not doing any type of tactical stuff. So I just made these 2 images, and I want to move to 100% because I found that there is a weird glitch in Roll20 that if you drag and drop an image and it's a lower resolution than 100%, it will not bring the image over in the correct resolution. So I've got my images here saved recently. I see that Downtown Edmonds is here. So I'm going to drag it into Roll20. And here we are. Because it is set up to do so, it's snapping to the 60 by 60 grid. And so it's easy to put it right in its place there. And you can see that is right where it needs to be. And now you can do the same thing again, but this time with the Umbra. So we grab that. And that's now another image on top of this image. There we go. So now we want to type that. So now I want to adjust the layers. I want to send it to the back. So now when my players are in the game and they're running around Edmonds and they, go wherever they need to go, but now they want to step sideways into the Umbra, well, I can just switch the layer order and bam, there they are in the Umbra. I don't have to make a separate page. I don't have to worry like I used to. I can now just, here you are, faster, easier access to those things. I also brought these into the wrong layer. They need to be in the map layer. So now they are in the map layer. That's important because you don't want your players moving the map around. And and you don't want to accidentally move the map around while you're moving things. So easy enough to send them to the back. And if you want to see how that will end up, how that will look as a final result, let's see, let's do that. So we can put our players on the Edmonds page, and we can fade in downtown Edmonds. Our players are in that space. They see that in Roll20. And for our audience, when things become important for the virtual tabletop, we can kick our players over here, and we've got all this space for activities. And we can have somebody roll some magic. And it looks like 2 successes. Yep, 2 successes. Rolled a 1 as well. Well, I think that covers all the bases here. I believe if you're interested in the behind the scenes stuff for um, Seattle at Dawn, this is where it's at. For the most part, I do a lot of imagery type stuff in Roll20 because it's easier for me to tell the story. I am not the most gifted when it comes to verbal descriptions and the like. And I myself don't have a very good visual memory or visual imagination. Some might even call it aphantasic. I may have aphantasia. It's very likely. So all my artwork has always been about discovery. Like I don't know what it's going to look like what going into it. I'm not gifted enough to know the plan as well as some others. But that being said, I am able to know what looks good, what doesn't look good, um, and I can plan that and create images like this for my players. And it just adds another layer of interaction for them and for me. So I hope you enjoyed this small little peek into the behind the scenes stuff for Mage. In the future, I'll probably be talking more about some story development, character development, the different story arcs, start creating some characters, filling out some information. I kind of want to get a quieter keyboard because I'll be doing a lot of typing with those, and I don't want to annoy you with my clicky clacks. So for now, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for watching. Um, Give a like to the video if you enjoyed any of this. Subscribe to the channel here at YouTube or on Twitch or vice versa. Wherever you want to watch me, I don't mind. Um, the more you encourage me, the more I'll be able to do things like this, and I am looking forward to that. So, have a magical Monday. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.